this round at this time in this place. But this will be a battle for our humanity and justice for the rest of our lives.
Well,
welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known, and that was Jamaal Bowman, the congressman who we had on yesterday. His primary was yesterday, and he lost his primary battle to George Latimer. We're going to talk more about that, especially when you consider it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing that on the other side of the country, or not necessarily on the other side of the country, but somewhere out there, Lauren Boebert actually won her primary by 534 votes. Just shows you the mindset of some folks and the mindset of the country, because again, we know why Jamaal Bowman lost his race. That AIPAC money came in big time for George Latimer, and even certain Democrats went against him, including Hillary Clinton. She was among the top Democrats to run or to endorse and back George Latimer, the former Westchester County executive, who I tell you, as we say yesterday, has engaged in so much oppression, so much racism out in Westchester County, and to see Jamaal Bowman defeated by someone of that ilk is really sad. And we got Austin with us today.
My brother, good to see you. Good morning. I have to admit, I'm not surprised with the outcome in the Bowman race. I remember when in 2010, when President Obama addressed the press, I guess the day after the Democrats lost control, I believe, of both houses of Congress. The term he used was a shellacking, and certainly that term would apply here. But here's the deal: Jamaal went out, on his own terms.
Right.
He got elected on his own terms, and he was defeated, on his own terms. Now, in that, when you're an elected official, you have to be balanced in your views, and you have to represent as best as you can all of your constituents. I think that his criticisms of the government of Israel and of Netanyahu were on point. And I think, far too often, you're viewed as, anti-Semitic if you criticize the views or the leadership of that country. I mean, I criticized Donald Trump throughout the 4 years of his presidency, and I still do. Doesn't make me anti-American. In my opinion, it makes me more American, because I'm trying to adhere to the principles of democracy. But I don't know. I mean, I listened to his. It wasn't really a concession speech last night. He didn't concede. I'm not aware that he has called Latimer, and I would not be surprised if he and his team are discussing a third-party challenge.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't as well, Austin. I think that's a great point. I think he may very well go that route. It's an available avenue, and I don't see why not. And Mike V brings this up, and I think this is a major problem that Democrats have had, and this is another reason why you have a convicted felon who has destroyed America's reputation as the front runner for president. Mike V says Hillary's endorsement of George Latimer only further proves why Black folks, especially Black men, don't trust establishment Democrats. It's shameful, he says. I think he hit something on there. Hit on something right there, Austin.
No, right on point. And with these, especially these younger, voters, like, in Bowman's voting age, they're looking at this political sphere, a whole lot differently than has been done traditionally. To me, sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not so good. I recall when AOC was first elected, the firebrand that she was. And she came in, and in one of her first, sit downs with then Speaker Pelosi, and Speaker Pelosi had given her the okay to bash me as much as you need to do in order to get reelected, if that's what you need to do. And once she got elected, in their first sit down, the then Congresswoman elect, learned, okay, now that you're elected, you have a responsibility to govern. And then Speaker Pelosi told her, what committee assignments do you want? And that's when it became real. You can talk on the campaign. I want to be appointed to this committee. I want to be on that committee because I'm going to bring this bacon home on this issue, that bacon home on that issue. But when you sit down with the speaker who has sole say so in what committee assignments you get, that's when that's one of the first reality jolts for many members of Congress. I don't know. I know that district, because Congressman Elliott Engel used to be the chair of Foreign Affairs, held that seat for about 20 years, and was defeated by Bowman. But as I understand it, the district changed, significantly due to congressional, districting, redrawing of the districts, and what used to be primarily the Bronx, now became Westchester County. Well, when it becomes Westchester County, guess what? That's a change in the racial makeup of your constituency, and you have to be, balanced in your representation. I mean, again, I have heard him critical of the Hamas attacks on October 7th, as he should have been, but I've also heard him critical of the unnecessary and overkill with innocent Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Well, and anyone should have a problem with Benjamin Netanyahu intentionally and directly trying to influence an American election.
Exactly.
That should be something that, as much as folks pride themselves on elections and voting and things, that should not be tolerated.
And this will be when he comes to address Congress, I believe on July 24th. If my memory serves me correctly, this will be only the second time that a visiting head of state has come to address a joint session of Congress where that visit has not been, coordinated, signed off on, not only by the speaker, but by the occupant of the White House. The first time he came was probably midway through the President Obama's first term, maybe the beginning of the second term, but Speaker Boehner invited him, and tensions were very, things were very tense between the President Obama, and the Prime Minister, and he still came.
Yeah. Well, Mike V points out too, as we know, Bernie Sanders called for a ceasefire, but no one ever called him anti-Semitic. He says him being talking about Jamaal being a strong black man in stature plays a role. It's the optics of it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah, but again, and I agree with Mike's point, 100%. But Bernie's Senator Sanders's, dynamics, makeup of his district in Vermont are vastly different from those of this particular congressional district. But I do think that he was unfairly targeted. I think that he was unfairly targeted as anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and that's nobody goes after anybody when they're anti-black. When's the last time you heard of someone pumping $15 million, whatever was pumped in by AIPAC, into a race because that person there, this candidate here, incumbent or running, is anti-black, and we cannot have that in the United States Congress.
And it's the fact that they all now this puts everyone on notice that they all are now vulnerable. All of the Congressional Black Caucus is vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And those who particularly those who speak up and speak out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, I keep on going back to it's always, a delicate, walk when it comes to this particular issue of foreign policy. I know Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, endorsed him, but I don't know that he was visible in the
Right,
campaign.
right.
I know that when the prime minister comes to town next week, I'm going to be curious to see, how many Democrats show up for the State of the Union, not State of the Union, but for his joint session address to a joint session of Congress, and I want to see how many CBC members show up for that address to Congress.
Yeah. Austin, the first Superman movie, way back when, um, after all of the destruction, Superman had put Lois Lane under this spell, and after the destruction, because she knew his identity, so he had to like erase her memory. She wakes up, everything happened. She goes, so somebody fill me in. What's happening in the world? So this morning, as you witnessed, Greer says, we've got to discuss Kenya. And I was like, well, what's happening in Kenya? And I did see that yesterday. I did see the storming of the parliament, um, but I didn't realize it was in Kenya. So I digress. The sting of tear gas, the crack of live bullets, the images of wounded people, reporters trying to give reports, and men coming out with automatic weapons, scaring them off. Everything is going on in Kenya after the parliament passed a controversial bill raising taxes despite criticism that it would intensify economic depression. At least 5 people died from gunshot wounds, at least 5. They're expecting perhaps more deaths, I should say, in Kenya. Austin, what's going on in Kenya?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to note out that what's going on in Kenya.
Young Kenyans are demonstrating for their rights. They're demonstrating with flags and banners. I can't even see anymore. They're being tear gassed. They're being
President Obama's half sister.
Wow, wow, wow. Again, this is in recent days there, the government has been accused of abducting critics, making mass arrests, and just brutally assaulting people.
Yeah, and Stacey, you are seeing this more and more across Africa, which is made up of 54 countries. I think it's important to point out here that Kenya President Ruto was just here, less than a month ago for a state visit with the president. I think it's safe to say that had this happened prior to that state visit, that visit would have either been canceled or at least delayed. But what you see here is young people protesting their government's economic, primarily policies, and you're seeing it more and more across the continent. One of my clients at an organization called the African American Institute, and 30 years ago, we had a program where we provided bright Africans with graduate school scholarships to come to the United States, get their graduate degrees on the condition that they return home and make a difference. So we have doctors, lawyers, ministers, teachers, but we also have had 4 heads of state, AAI alum who have become heads of state. And last year, with our 70th anniversary, we wanted to bring them all together. One of them is Ramaphosa, President Ramaphosa from South Africa. He couldn't leave because of the political challenges he was facing at home. He didn't even come to the United Nations General Assembly. The then president of Niger was overthrown last July, several months before the start of UNGA. So it's. I mean, what we're seeing here What we're seeing
Yeah.
in Kenya is all across Africa. You see it in parts of Europe. There were recently protests in France, and folks are just saying that we've had enough with policies that are hurting the common man, the common woman, the common boy, the common girl.
Yeah, and this is a nation of 54 million people, and as you pointed out, these are a lot of these are very young protesters because young people there have used technology, they've used social media to organize opposition to the
Yeah,
government
yeah,
that
yeah,
they say transcends ethnicities, tribes, races, and socioeconomic class. Um, so they are, it's the young ones, and it's always the young, and this is why we can't, no matter where you are, you have to pay attention to the young ones. You have to make
absolutely.
space, give them their space. It's their time. We
Mhm.
don't see that enough.
No, agreed, agreed. And here we are. The U.S. ambassador to South Africa. I'm drawing a blank on her first name. It's Ambassador Whitman. You may
Hmm.
know her as the former chairwoman of, I believe, IBM. And again, she was here. She's mentioned as, during a second Biden term as potentially being a Secretary of State or being
Right.
a cabinet, being a cabinet official. But um, Ruto may be in trouble, depending on how this
Well,
turns out,
this bill
how
that
this
he
plays out.
presented, yeah, the bill that he presented, it's called Finance Bill 2024. He presented it to Parliament in May, and he framed it, Austin, as this effort to increase revenue to help the country deal with debt. But the bill called for taxes on essentials like bread, cooking oil, of course, cars, and just little things that you need for everyday life, butter.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but public backlash was intense, and some of the lawmakers said, "Hey, wait a minute, this might be going too far." And then, of course, on Tuesday, they passed that bill. And now it's going to increase taxes on things like eggs and, as we said, bread, and as well as on the phone and internet usage, bank transfer fees. Now, it's interesting because here, the right wing folks here in government has gone against President Biden's initiative to limit bank fees and all because Biden wants to all but erase bank fees.
bank fees. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but here, I mean, there they passed this bill. Now they're going to pay for just to have a bank account. The cost itself, the monthly cost, is going to skyrocket. And don't don't go over what is it, overdraft,
Hmm.
because it's going to cost exponential. Um, but basics, Austin, basics: bread, water, butter,
To a people
uh,
who are already struggling. And let me
for
tell
people
you,
who are already struggling. Yeah.
I have seen poverty in many parts of Africa. Um, that I would be hard pressed to say that I have seen here in the United States. I mean, you can go to poor neighborhoods. Some may call them ghettos, but for many parts of Africa, apartment buildings in America that are in ghettos or economically depressed areas or some people may call slums would be luxury living
Yeah.
to many
Listen.
people in Africa. When you go into someone's home, that is literally made of like a hard mud or clay,
Hmm.
and when you
Hmm.
look up at the ceiling and you see it's tin, so that you look around and you see pots and pans, because when it starts raining, if the rain leaks in, this is how people live. I was
Yeah.
talking to someone in Mozambique the other day, and the call just dropped. And she texted me the next day, And I thought it was WhatsApp screwing up, but she said, no, it wasn't WhatsApp. I ran out of minutes and I had to go into town to get more minutes. I mean, it is there are challenges there for everyday Africans that we just don't see here. Not to minimize the challenges of poor folks in America. We have our folks who are sincerely struggling. So I don't mean to minimize what they're going through, but on the continent of Africa, it's a different kind of poverty. It's a different kind of suffering.
When I was in Malawi, in fact, Anna Chavis, Dr. Chavis's daughter, and I were talking to this family. Man, he had 10 kids. Like the type of house or structure that you described, and we gave him money. I gave him $20, American dollars, and this man was so happy. Now he didn't ask for it. We was just interviewing, and I, for his time, I said, here, because he took time out. They were working. All of them were working, and I gave him $20, and he told me that this will carry him and his family for months.
Absolutely.
For months.
No,
I couldn't believe it. So Anna gave him another $20.
Yeah. No, I mean, we just don't know. Again, not minimizing poverty and the challenges that people face here, but even to a person who's facing financial challenges, to most of them, $20 is not a lot of money.
Right.
But on the continent of Africa, for many, where folks are living off of what would be the equivalent of 30 or 40 USD to feed a family of 4 or 5 or sometimes more, it's completely different. So when you talk about adding a couple of cents to butter and adding a couple of cents to bread and some of the other basic essentials, that for many of these folks, it's a luxury. It's a challenge to even get it. And now you're going to make it even more challenging. Folks have had enough, and they're going to turn on the government, and that's what we see here.
Yeah, this is a really unreal situation happening now in Kenya, and I understand that the lawmakers there had to they hold up in the basement of Parliament trying to, I guess, protect themselves.
Yeah.
But it's really quite a situation there, and we need to keep our eye on what's going on, as you and Greer said pre-show, what's going on the continent. It's really important. I got before we segue, Austin, I got some little piece of breaking news for you, and that Aunt Pam is watching.
Aunt Pam. I'm going to be in my best behavior, Aunt Pam. I'm not mentioning.
Yeah, we'll see. That remains to be seen.
Don't tempt me, Aunt Pam. Don't tempt me.
But Mike B points out too, and Greer says we need to go over to Kenya to cover this on the ground. But Mike B points out that there is digital poverty as well. He was just in Nairobi in February, and Aunt Pam says, "Hey, Austin." You see how that works. But speaking of violence, and what's happening at Parliament. Obviously, we saw January 6th, and the instigator, the architect of the January 6th attacks, he's at it again. The twice impeached, 4 times and indicted, 34 times. Wait, she stopped me mid-sentence. She goes, "No," I said, "She wants to go." She said, "I know you ain't even trying to go to Queens." Listen,
Who said that, Greer?
Who else? Who else? The award-winning producer, director, and manager of Let It Be Known says, "I'm not even trying to go to Queens." Austin, do not tolerate that type of behavior. I don't care who it comes from.
Greer is hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's absolutely right. But anyway, Trump has expanded his portrayal of migrants as violent with the suggestion, and Trump said this, they should be pitted in fights. for everyone's entertainment. He said it during a speech to Christian conservatives, and then again at a rally in Philadelphia. He said he told his friend Dana White, the president of the UFC, that he should start a spinoff competition featuring migrants as part of his riff on restricting immigration. He says, "Did you ever hear of Dana White?" He says, "I said, Dana, I have an idea. Why don't you set up a migrant league of fighters and have your regular league of fighters, and then you have the champion of your league. These are the greatest fighters in the world. Fight the champion of the migrants. I think the migrant guy might win. That's how tough they are." He didn't like the idea too much, talking about Dana White. But Trump continues to push violence.
I
He
mean,
has said that if they lose in November, that there was going to be chaos and violence and everything else. He continues to push it.
yeah, the thing is, Trump sees everything economic policy, international policy, domestic. Everything he sees it in the eyes of a television reality show, and it's not necessarily about polls and more about ratings. And he's serious with that suggestion of having migrants
Oh, he's totally
fighting
serious.
one another. I mean, think about it. The man who is going to soon accept the Republican nomination for president 4 or 5 days after he is sentenced.
Why don't you set up a migrant league of fighters and have your regular league of fighters, and then you have the champion of your league. These are the greatest fighters in the world. Fight the champion of the migrants. I think the migrant guy might win. That's how tough they are. He didn't like that idea too much, but actually it's not the worst idea I've ever had.
Can you imagine?
It's not the worst.
This is no. I mean, this is, we're just so far beyond reality. I know we've got the the debate coming up tomorrow. Let me just read something, if I may, about he talks about how senile and President Biden going to get a shot in the behind to be alert tomorrow. But if people would just try and be objective, just really try to be objective and listen to what he's saying. Listen to this quote here. And you and Greer probably heard this. This is a speech he gave last week. I'm going to read quickly. "And the fake news, they go. He told this crazy story with electorate. It's actually not crazy. It's sort of a smart story, right? Sort of like, it's like the snake. It's a smart when you figure out when you're leaving in, right?" Does that make any sense to you?
No, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up
It's
because
crazy, Stacey. It's crazy.
Yeah, I did an article last week about the various things that he has said that have makes absolutely no sense, and yet his Jim Jones following, his Kool-Aid drinkers cheer, and yet it's so incoherent. And that's the thing that I guess with Trump, people talk about Biden and how old he is. Now Trump's only a couple of years younger, but this guy says things that most people, and if he wasn't in his position, I'd imagine his family might say, maybe we need to get this guy checked out, or maybe we need to put him in commit him somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, because he talked the other day about these about washing machines, and he's like, "Where does the water come from?"
Yeah.
He says, "I don't understand," and I'm thinking, "Oh wow, he's serious."
And a couple speeches, I know you and Greer in our audience heard it. He transitioned from whatever nonsense he was talking about to Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
Hannibal Lecter, and then in another speech he's talking about sharks in the water.
Sharks in the water.
I mean, it wasn't in a speech on the environment. It makes no sense. Yet it doesn't matter.
The Hannibal Lecter thing.
People.
Yeah, Hannibal Lecter. He insisted was a real person, and is a real, but not was, but is a real person. and he goes, Silence of the Lambs. And it was really interesting because there was no connection.
No.
He was making no connection. He wasn't trying to go from point A to point B. He was just spewing this stuff as if um, he has Alzheimer's or dementia or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And I don't take that lightly. I have an aunt, not Aunt Pam, of course, but I have an aunt with dementia,
Mhm.
right? And I have good friends who are taking care of
We all do. We
their
all do.
parents
Yep.
who are,
Yep.
so I don't use that lightly. But I've seen these individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's much more coherent than Donald Trump,
Hmm. Hmm. And
much more articulate.
yeah, yeah. And I have my concerns about President Biden's stamina, President Biden's energy level, as I would any other 81-year-old who's the president of the United States and who's seeking to be president for another 4 years. I have even more concerns about the mental capacity of Donald Trump.
Hmm.
I think Donald Trump comes across as younger, more energetic than does President Biden.
Yeah.
But where is his heart? Where is his mind? Listen to that debate tomorrow. All Trump does in all of his speeches, all he's going to do in that debate tomorrow is speaking refrains, speaking lyrics, speaking campaign slogans. There's not going to be any kind of consistency. If they're talking about what's happening in the Gaza Strip, he's going to quickly transition. He may avoid that and quickly transition to uh, Mexico, sending in their worst,
Yeah,
rapists,
and you
killers.
make some great points. A couple of weeks ago, Ashley Fields, our fantastic young Capitol Hill White House reporter, her and I were in the room with the president as he was talking, and you and I actually went into the Oval Office together,
Hmm.
um, and I bring up that because this you realize when you get a chance to go into the Oval Office or go where the president is and shake his hand and talk to him or whatever, you realize that this is a senior citizen, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And 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 um and that's fine. But as you said, on the other side of the spectrum, Donald Trump he might be a little more like you said, more energetic,
Have more bounce in his step, but
more bounce in his step.
he had too
But
much bounce in his brain.
right. I'm glad you said it. That's where
He's
exactly.
nuts. He's nuts.
And Power 96 is right. They're in the same age category. And
Yes,
Mike D says, if
yes.
I was Biden, I would flip the ageism attack into one about affordable health care for seniors with disabilities
Great,
alike.
great, great,
Exactly.
great, great. Absolutely, absolutely,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And I
I mean,
think
I
he's
think.
been lately handling that age stuff really well as far as questions
Mhm,
and things like that. I think the president has been handling that pretty well.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So Austin, at least 40 million Americans may be regularly targeted and fed disinformation within Black online spaces by a host of sources across social media, which fuels false information around the election. And this is according to this report that was just published. It's the first deep dive into understanding disinformation targeting Black America. The report was published by Onyx Impact. It's a nonprofit group that works to combat disinformation, but it identified half a dozen core online networks reaching or targeting Black Americans online with false and misleading narratives. Conservative commentators like Candace Owens are among the most influential distributors of false information, according to the report. They mentioned a variety of others, like there's this Fresh and Fit podcast, but they also mentioned Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club as a platform that spews disinformation to Black folks. So Black
Yeah,
folks are being targeted
yeah.
constantly.
I mean, no surprises here, and it's an insult by these folks. I think far too many of us don't realize when we are the victims of assault, be it victims of folks questioning our mental capacity, our capacity to understand and comprehend issues and the news of the day, and they're targeting a community that they view is ill-informed. It's not up to speed on the issues of the day. It's not going to take the time, don't have the mental capacities to think of the pros and cons of an issue. So we'll just feed them any information, and they're going to take it and run with it. As hard as it is sometimes, I will listen to every week. I spend some time listening to News Nation. I will listen
As hard
to
as it is.
Fox. Yeah, yeah, and you sit there because I'm really trying to, and I often walk away, frustrated. I got to stop doing this so often. But I'm really trying to figure out what is making these, this cult tick. What is
Right.
click? What is the driving force behind these crazies? If I can look at this and see this is nonsense. For example, if you listen to Trump and some of his other allies, 81-year-old Joe Biden is the head of one of the largest crime syndicates in the history of the world.
Right.
Yet
Right.
he can't stand for 90 minutes. He can't put sentences together. He's old. He falls all the time. He stutters. It can't be both.
Right. Right.
And I think that with this type of targeting, we all, Stacey, have a responsibility to this 40 million, how many of them are relying on the Washington Informer and the other Black newspapers as a primary, not only, but certainly a primary source of news about politics, what's happening in the community, what's happening internationally, et cetera. So we just have to do a better job of educating ourselves and not accepting everything, even if we read it in the more established paper, the more mainstream, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Miami Herald. Question, read with an open mind. And yeah, I think that's the only way we can protect ourselves from this type of political. It's really a political attack.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's interesting because I'm looking at comments. Mike V says artificial intelligence is also being weaponized against Black folks with
absolutely,
access to
absolutely.
low information on the issue of the day and political illiteracy as well. And Power 96 said he told everyone that this was going to be the year AI generated misinformation led by sellouts like that Owens person. And he says, who listens to Charlemagne?
Yeah.
but that's part of the problem, that these folks have these major platforms. And as we noted, and I mentioned it yesterday as well, like Greer has said, and she's so right, go to your doctor's office, go to your dentist, go to your clinic, barbershops, gyms, and they're playing Fox News. And so when you see a Byron Donalds on Fox News or a Tim Scott on Fox News, and they're posing as Black men, and so Black folks who don't follow the Black press, follow information that is not tainted with disinformation, they consume this and they believe that's the mainstream thinking. That's our thinking, mainstream Black thinking.
Yeah. And some of these same young Blacks in barbershops and elsewhere, all across the country, who are supporting Trump, can't, undecided. First of all, I don't know how anybody 4 or 5 months out from the election can be undecided, no matter what their party is. What's there to be undecided about? But okay. But these folks who received, the COVID checks, again, go back and educate yourself. If you go back, Stacey, Greer remember that Donald Trump was not in favor of COVID checks.
No,
that was
and I always
that was something that came out in the House and the Senate, And when he realized it was going to pass, then he insisted on, guess whose name was on the checks? I have never seen
Never.
the name of a president of the United States on any check. It automatically goes to whoever, not the Treasury Secretary. I forget who the person is whose name is on the check. Donald Trump made certain that his name was on those checks.
Yeah.
So you got folks feeling like, did this happen because it was a smart marketing tool for people who are not up to speed on the issues, and that's what folks are still remembering.
Yeah.
I got $1,200 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, I could see if you're getting $1,200 every week signed by Donald Trump.
Well, and that's where I was going.
Think about, okay.
Yep.
But one check, 2 checks. The most recent check was probably what, 2.5, 3 years ago. You haven't spent that $1,200 yet.
Boy, oh boy, I'm Pam. Austin's on a roll. But I said it, and as you noted, Trump was against the stimulus checks. He was against them. And the House, led by the Congressional Black Caucus, and then, like, as you articulated, the Senate, they passed it, but they wanted, certainly the Congressional Black Caucus members had pushed for bigger checks for a longer period of time, and not just one check and then perhaps one check later, which is what actually happened. That 1,200 and then another 1,200. I think it was 6 months or a year later. But Dave was pushing for, I think at one point, and Bernie Sanders as well was pushing for something like $5,000 a month throughout the pandemic, and they went against that. They said no. If Trump said no for sure, so they had to twist his arm to get the $1,200. And as you said, he made sure to put his name on the check. And yes, Mike V, it worked so well. Even Sexy Red was promoting it. Yeah. Another lost cause. And so we've been talking about violence. The Surgeon General, wait a minute. Pam says she didn't get her check. You got to look into that one, Austin.
I will. I'll call Clyburn's office as soon as it's, and Pam, I'll be in touch.
He'll be in touch. So the Surgeon General of the United States has declared firearm violence a public health crisis. He warns of its severe impact on both physical and mental health across the nation. It was a landmark advisory that he issued where he emphasized that gun violence poses a, quote, serious threat to the health and well-being of our country. It's the first time, Austin, that the government's leading public health body has focused directly on gun violence. He says, as a doctor, I've seen the consequences of firearm violence up close in the lives of the patients I have cared for. These are moms and dads, sons and daughters, all of whom were robbed of their physical and mental health by senseless acts of violence. Of course, the NRA slammed this advisory, but who cares?
Yeah, certainly kudos to the Biden administration and the Secretary General for making gun violence a health issue, a national health crisis, like we did with the pandemic and other national health crises. So I think that it should be commended. With this action taken, announced yesterday, it will bring additional federal resources and certainly additional attention to an issue. But the bottom line is, this is a good good Band-Aid, a necessary Band-Aid, a necessary tourniquet. Again, bringing additional attention to this crisis. But the real issue is the access to all sorts of weapons that are accessible, appear to be, to almost any and everybody. AK-47, other assault weapons. And that's the real issue. And this administration, I know the President Biden has done one or at least two, executive orders on to address the gun violence issue. But in terms of getting any meaningful legislation out of this Congress, he has not. I don't think think I'm wrong. I don't remember if I am wrong, but he's not had. I don't recall any meaningful gun legislation that has been passed during his term as president.
Right.
Not because he didn't want it, because I know that you recall that in our meeting with the vice president and the president, they were both critical of the Senate.
Very
And
much
one
so.
particular black member of Senate from South Carolina, who will go nameless, for holding up,
Yep.
for holding up an agreement on significant gun reform.
Well, yeah, they actually had an agreement that, of
Yes,
course,
yes,
that
yes.
certain black senator from South Carolina, as you alluded to or described, then of course, reneged on the deal.
Hmm. Hmm.
So here we are, and gun violence is what it's like the leading cause of death, especially among young people now.
Hmm. Hmm. And keep in mind, these, these, gun advocates who are, who believe in the right to own, many of them believe in the right to own any kind of gun you want.
Yeah.
Some believe that with background checks, some are comfortable without background check. Some are comfortable with, if you have a mental issue, you should never own a gun. Others are comfortable. I don't care. It's his second or her Second Amendment right to be armed. But they are clapping, they are cheering Hunter Biden's conviction
Right.
on three, felony gun charges.
Hmm.
He's admitted that he was on, drugs at the time. He's admitted that he was not honest on the application, although some would argue that he thought that he might have been in recovery. But look, he put himself in that situation. But what about Hunter's right to own a gun? That's the problem with politics these days. Common sense only applies on certain issues. When if Donald Trump wins the election, it was fair. If he loses the election, it was not fair. 4 years ago, we lost control of the House,
Hmm.
and we barely
Well,
got control of the Senate. But that's the same election. That's the very same election that Joe Biden won.
well, Mike V makes the point too. This about this certain black senator from South Carolina. He was around when a church in Charleston full of black people was slaughtered by the very same firearm access who was influenced by great replacement theory.
Good point. Good
So
point.
so they see all of this, and yet they turn a blind eye. But
And
that stat that Greer showed, 51% of high schools or 14 to 17-year olds. That's so basically high schoolers.
that's crazy.
They
That's
worry
crazy.
about school shootings. And so we're not talking about test scores anymore. We're
No,
not talking
no.
about the SATs anymore. We're not talking about you know, getting an A or B. Their concern is leaving school and getting home alive.
And I'll take it another step further, because I was listening to the Surgeon General talk on this executive action that he took yesterday on Morning Joe a short while ago, and he said that he was talking to a young person who escaped a shooting at a grocery store where several people were killed, and she refuses now to wear flip flops when she's going
Mm,
to the store or going to the mall, because when she was running for her life, the flip
yep.
flops were slowing her down. Another kid told him that I don't wear the light up sneakers at night anymore, because if I need to run, I don't want to be a target. This is how our young people, the kind of decisions our young people have to make in this environment of gun violence.
Wow. And just think about that. The light up sneakers at night. Generally, hey, it's a great idea. If it's, especially if you live in an area where it's dark,
And you're
you know,
jogging or whatever. Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
jogging or what, it's a
Mhm.
great idea. But that's been taken away because the NRA and these so-called conservatives and right wingers, they want to have everyone armed. We have all these laws now in which 18-year-olds in certain places don't need a permit or a license to carry a gun. So everyone's being armed. They're being armed for a reason, Austin. They're being armed for a particular reason, if you ask me. And it's been going on for a while now. You got this guy, Trump, talking about violence if he doesn't win. They're being armed for a reason. I think
Absolutely.
January 6th was just the rehearsal for what's to come.
Yeah, and I'm more concerned about America. Certainly, if Trump is reelected, I think we are witnessing the beginning of the end, potentially the end of American democracy, and American democracy, as we know it, will certainly end under Trump. However, I'm also equally concerned, well, not as concerned, but I'm concerned if President Biden wins re-election, because I think last January 6th is, January 6th, 2021 is going to be a cakewalk compared to what's going to happen on whatever the date. We're going to have to go through the very same process as the Congress.
Yes.
Now, we have the advantage of, hindsight. So I don't think we'll see people storming. I know we won't see people storming the Capitol like they did before, but they can storm state capitals that don't have the resources that we'll have in here in Washington.
I think it'll start. You're right, but I think it'll start with, like you said, the states, because that's where the certification really, the process begins, the counting. You remember when they were counting the votes, particularly in Georgia and Fulton County, and Wisconsin, there were folks, mostly Trump supporters. They had to hold them outside. They were already, demanding to see the count, and they started there. It started there, and so I think it'll start there again. But I think
Absolutely.
there is where you will see a lot of the violence.
Absolutely.
That's where it will begin,
Yep.
and that's
Agreed.
sad. That's really sad. It's look, we're saying this not because we want this to happen. We're
Absolutely
saying this
not.
because it's reality.
Yeah.
So
This is where America is.
what's surprising to me, and Power 96 is saying this, he says, until law enforcement gets behind legislation to stop gun violence, nothing will happen. That's surprising to me that they have not. We don't really hear from police unions and officers and law enforcement in general, right? We don't hear from them on this issue. Why is that?
I can't give you. I wish I knew. I honestly wish I knew. I do know that a lot of these police unions, almost all police unions, are opposed. What's the term, Stacy, for an officer being convicted of a crime and losing his pension,
Yeah,
losing his retirement?
qualified immunity.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty certain that most, if not all, police unions are opposed to that. But why these police department and law enforcement is not behind controlling the types of weapons and the number of weapons that are on the streets, when they are the ones primarily being targeted, and we're all targeted, but certainly they are at the top of the list.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You think they would be first in line to say, hey, you guys got to do something about this. We can't have all these guns on the street. We can't have these weapons and everybody carrying weapons.
Yep.
The only restriction that the conservatives, the Republicans agree to is and not in all states, but certainly in some, where if it's a domestic violence situation, and that individual is convicted, his privileges of owning a gun, he loses it. I don't know if he loses it for life, but he loses it to some extent, for some extent of time. But Other than that, they want everybody armed.
That's right. That's right. And how
And
many?
where's it going? Where's it going? I'm sorry, Austin. They want everybody armed. They don't want you knowing or anything about Black history. They don't want you learning because Trump has said, and Project 2025 eliminates the Department of Education. They want the Ten Commandments in school. They don't want women, regardless of the circumstances, to abort a child. In fact, they're calling some places, they even call it for the death penalty for women who abort their children. Where's it all going?
To the good old days. To the good old days. To the days of prior signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, prior to the signing of the 1965 Voting Rights Bill, prior, going back to the days of slavery. That's where we are going if we don't put our foot down and get to the polls and vote. You don't have to be I think both candidates are too old to be running for president, but that's what we have. We have an 81-year-old white male running for president, and we have a 77-year-old white male running for president. 78, just turned 78 last week. One has a good heart and is not a threat to American democracy and does not want to go back to the good old days. And another wants to relive the good old days. And that's where we're going. That is where we're going if we don't put our foot down. Let me say one, if I could say, we got the debate tomorrow, Stacey, and everybody's saying that the mic, no audience. That's the first time we've not had an audience in the presidential debate since the October 21st, 22nd, 1960 debate between Senator Kennedy and Vice President Nixon in the studio. No audience, just the two of them, going at it. And this will be the first time since then that this has occurred. Now, one of the things folks are saying, and Trump's team agreeing to this, was the mics being turned off while Trump's mic being turned off while President Biden is speaking. And my attitude is, so what? I think tomorrow I would not be surprised to see when President Trump is speaking, we're going to still be able to hear Trump in the background. If Trump starts yelling, we're going to be able to hear. But I think, and I'll to make this point quickly, I would not be surprised that to steal the thunder from tomorrow night's debate, and so that on Friday, that's the top of the news and not how well he did or how well he did. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump announces his running mate during the debate.
Oh, that's a great point. I think he will.
There's nothing to say that he can't.
He said yesterday, he has made his decision. So I think you hit a nerve there. I think you're right.
That way, if he does poorly, or if Biden does, hopefully the president will do well. That is going to take a lot of the sting, a lot of the news away from how either man performed in the debate. Keep in mind, he's about ratings. He's a showman.
Yeah.
Remember what he did with the first debate with Secretary Clinton, when he brought 5 or 6 women that allegedly had affairs with Bill Clinton, and had them sitting he did a press conference with them right before, and then had them sitting in his box.
To me, he should have been. Folks should not have accepted that.
Yes,
because
yes.
Like her or not, the victim of Bill Clinton's affairs was Hillary Clinton.
Exactly, and that's a very good point. Victim.
And so I remember when that happened, like you said, he bought those women. And I remember saying the same thing. This is not right. And the fact that folks go along with this, is going along with this, the fact that those women would go along with it shows you the type of women they are.
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line. But that was horrible. Among the horrible things he's done. I mean, he's done so many horrible things, but that was one of them.
And in the first debate, October 2020, he was positive for COVID when he went out on stage and shook Joe Biden's hand. He was positive.
Yeah. Mike V said he has said that the VP pick will be announced during the debate. So
I was not aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, I guess that went over my head too, Mike. But that figures. It figures that he would do something like that. So tomorrow night is, another reason why some folks will watch. We watch because, well, I'm not going to speak for Austin. I watch because it's my job to watch.
No, I mean, I'm a political junkie, so I will certainly be watching, front and center. I'm hoping that and expecting President Biden to be on his A+ game tomorrow. I was looking at excerpts from the debate 4 years ago. They debated twice. The first time that I'm aware of that a sitting president of the United States, at least publicly, was told, "Will you shut up, man?" And I suspect there may be another "Will you shut up, man" moment.
How many shut-ups are we gonna get?
And let me say that, if Donald Trump does announce, I think Tim Scott is out of the running for all that tap dancing that he did. Doesn't look like he's under consideration. Same thing with Byron Donalds. But if J.D. Vance, if he announces him, then President Biden's response would be, "Okay, congratulations, Senator J.D. Vance Trump," and keep it moving, because there's no difference in the two.
Yeah, there is no difference in the two. And again, more racist rhetoric will be going. That just adds to it, because this J.D. Vance is just wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, folks, keep informed. Keep watching Austin. It's good to have Austin back on Let It Be Known. It's good to have all you watching. Power 96 says he's not watching the debate tomorrow. He says he's voting for Biden, and he will be in the swamp looking for crawfish.
Okay.
Wow. Well, he's got his evening planned. Listen, subscribe to our YouTube page, Let It Be Known News, and share it, like it, share it, tell your friends, tell your family. Austin's gonna tell some people.
Absolutely.
We want you to do that. And Power 96, be on the lookout before you go into the swamp. Maybe take your phone with you if it works in the swamp, because Greer's going to give you a call. So stay tuned, Power 96. I think we want some of that crawfish.
Absolutely.
And Mike V says Trump needs the female vote and a female candidate as a running mate, with all the foolishness on reproductive rights under attack. And Mike V, we have been covering the Fearless Fund, but he said the leader stepped down yesterday. Yes, thanks, Mike V. We will talk more about that tomorrow at your request. Yes, the Fearless Fund. Yes, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And we're pretty much out of time now, but Austin, that really is awful what has happened there. These racist so-called conservatives destroying something so good. Black women helping Black women, and they are saying, well, you're not helping white women, so we're shutting it down. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That they are able to get away with that. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Power 96 says he'll be ready. And Michelle's Delicious Delights, thanks for watching. We appreciate you as well. We appreciate you all. Pam, do not expect Austin to follow up. I'm telling you.
Pam, I'm going to follow up to talk about Taylor Smith. Bye, Pam.
Thanks for watching. Let It Be Known. We'll see you again tomorrow.